Megan Rosenfeld.
Good evening, members of the Education Committee. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. I've also submitted written testimony addressing SB 220. Again, my name is Megan Rosenfeld. I hold a Master of Education and Montessori credentials in teaching and school administration, and I currently serve as Regional Director for an international Montessori organization. As someone who is dyslexic and the parent of a child with dyslexia in public school, and an educational leader with lived experience identifying best practices for literacy instruction that support all learners, I understand firsthand how much science-backed literacy instruction and interventions matter. I believe this bill could be transformative with key changes and state-appropriated funding. Connecticut's experience with the right to read law is instructive here. Many districts supported the goal, but found implementation challenging. And as experts stated earlier today, some schools remain out of compliance. The Connecticut Education Association, the state's largest teachers union, put it plainly. The conversation focused on which textbooks children used rather than on building teacher capacity. And they were right. The real gap was not curriculum alone, it was teacher preparation. Colleges and universities had largely failed to incorporate the science of reading into their programs, leaving classroom teachers, reading specialists, and special education teachers alike to implement methods they were never taught to implement. For this bill to be successful where the last one struggled, it must take into account additional factors. The rollout timeline needs to be adjusted so that state-funded teacher training aligned with Connecticut's May 2025 structured literacy and dyslexia competencies can be completed before the mandate takes effect. A reading specialist requirement without the loophole needs to be addressed to remove the word as practicable, as it currently exempts the districts that need specialists most. The Science of Reading Aligned core curriculum through grade 9 must replace misaligned methods. Science of Reading Aligned curricula are universal accommodations for those with dyslexia and support all learners. It will provide a solid foundation for the tiered intervention approach. Sufficient instructional time must also be allotted. Structured literacy approaches like Orton-Gillingham require 45 to 60 minutes per session. A 30-minute add-on cannot deliver the method successfully. A grant-funded program by donations is not a funding mechanism. State-appropriated funding must be included to support this bill. As written, the consequences are predictable. Students will receive the appearance of intervention, but not the results. Teachers will be handed another mandate they haven't been trained or given time to meet, and compliance becomes paperwork and not practice, and the frustration will continue to grow. Taxpayers will pay twice, first for a program that doesn't work, then for the special education costs that follow. In Connecticut districts that are already absorbing a 78 million gap in special education reimbursement cannot afford to shoulder more special education burdens. Compliance mechanisms that are supportive, not punitive, provide real funding, offer practical timelines for implementation, and realistic expectations for educators with meaningful training must be built into this bill. If it is to move forward, I recommend that administrators and teachers be heavily consulted on the revision of this bill. Those who are tasked with implementation must be part of the planning process for it to be successful. Thank you for your time and for advocating for these critical literacy interventions.
Thanks so much, Megan, for your testimony. Representative Menapace.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Rosenfeld. I think it's very admirable of being able to do this, and considering your background as someone who has dyslexia and your child having this. But I was hoping you could actually tell us a little bit more about that, of what you think in terms of the consultation with people like you, the parents who have this experience with it. If there's also just a better way that you think that this bill could address the timeline that we're asking for teachers and administrators to implement this. As you said, it's a lot of work to try and do this in a 30-minute add-on to a lesson. So I was hoping you could speak a little bit more about that. I really enjoyed reading your written testimony.
Oh, thank you. I don't want to frame myself as the expert on delivering special education. I'm not a special educator, first of all, and I'm not a reading specialist. I can speak as someone who has a child with dyslexia whose kindergarten year was during the first COVID year. He was struggling a lot with reading, and we weren't sure if it was because he was trying to learn through a computer, and if that was the difficulty, or if it was something more. After he was transitioned back into in-person instruction, it was clear that it was more than just a gap caused by the delivery of instruction, and he was formally diagnosed after testing for dyslexia. The school did try to offer as many interventions as possible. However, the instruction time that he received was in 30-minute increments, and his progress was not meeting goals that they were setting for him for his IEP. This was concerning to me as a parent because, as everyone knows, as a child moves through the curriculum, the reliance on being able to comprehend written word in order to take tests and understand assignments was critical, and he lacked that foundational knowledge. We were concerned about him needing to repeat grades. So my husband and I decided to pay for an Orton Gillingham instructor to meet with him 3 times a week for 1 hour increments for 3 sessions a week. And after he received that appropriate instruction, his reading just took off, and he was able to catch up and meet the rest of his peers where they were at in the curriculum, and he didn't need to repeat the grade. Unfortunately, the public school didn't have the resources in order to provide that level of specialized instruction for him. And I can't fault them. That wasn't built into their funding. It wasn't built into their formula for how they were going to address reading instruction. So do I have a perfect solution for that for public schools? No, I don't. But I'm sure there are a lot of public school educators who deliver this instruction that have a lot of good ideas on it. And I would encourage members of this committee to reach out to them for guidance on what would be a realistic timeline for a rollout, how long their teacher training programs would realistically take, and where that funding is going to come from.
Thank you.
Thank you.